gracious. He did some very bad things. I'm waiting for his new show to appear. I think we all are. Edd's become a TV star.
For years, Mike Brewer and Edd China were the dynamic duo that fueled the success of Wheeler Dealers and made it one of the most popular car shows in history. Together, they turned rusty wrecks into automotive masterpieces, built a multi-million-dollar brand, and brought custom car culture to millions of fans worldwide. But behind the scenes, their partnership wasn't always smooth sailing. There were creative differences, business struggles, and growing tensions that eventually led to Edd China's shocking departure. The story of Wheeler Dealers began with two men who couldn't have been more different. Mike Brewer was the fast-talking host with a sharp eye for profit, while Edd China was the soft-spoken mechanic that showed the audience how to fix things the right way. The show wasn't fake, it was just who they were. The audience loved the process of restoration, learning, and humor that became their trademark. Mike and Edd turned rusted-out cars into classic builds that could sell for double, even triple their purchase price. Brewer's relentless push to stay on budget met Edd's perfectionist attitude, creating a balance that powered the show's success. By the time Wheeler Dealers hit its 10th season, it wasn't just a popular show. It was a household name for car enthusiasts everywhere. The series had already aired in over 100 countries. Mike and Edd became unlikely global stars, recognized not just for their TV presence, but for how they inspired people to pick up a wrench and get their hands dirty. But while millions were glued to their screens, few realized the intense pressure building behind the scenes. As the show's success grew, so did the expectations, rushed builds, tighter deadlines, and a network with even more demands. And slowly, those creative differences began to wear on their partnership. But fans didn't know it yet. But the duo that built one of the most beloved car shows in history were heading for a collision, and then something surprising happened. The Wheeler Dealers earned more fans than any other car show. It wasn't just because of the builds, it was the impossible chemistry between Mike Brewer and Edd China. At 6'7", with his towering frame, Edd was all about the details. Whether it was rewiring a classic dashboard or rebuilding an engine from scratch, Edd wanted the job done properly. Fans respected that. Together, they blended Wheeler Dealers into a guide for car lovers. The audience could see the tension at times. But the thing that made them such a great team was also the thing tearing them apart. Mike's job was to keep the show profitable. He had to deal with producers and with tight filming schedules. Every episode needed to hit deadlines and stay under budget, but Edd wasn't going to stay quiet. They fought and argued because they approached the car world in completely different ways. For years, they held it together. The show thrived, and the cars kept rolling in. But Edd has other problems too. For years, their differences had been hard because of the damage. Brewer, with his desperate deal-hunting style, understood the need for efficient production. Meanwhile, Edd was being silenced. His reputation as a mechanic wasn't something he was willing to gamble for the sake of faster TV. Fans knew him for showing the real work, the messy details. Cutting those segments outraged him, and it started as a betrayal of what Wheeler Dealers stood for. Mike Brewer, claimed as the face of the show, had to balance the expectations of the network, the production crew, and the fans. So Brewer believed that keeping the show alive meant making tough choices, even if it meant replacing Edd. That wasn't all. What started as creative disagreements turned into deeper frustrations. The filming days were filled with tension. They had built Wheeler Dealers into a global empire were now struggling to see eye to eye. Then came the worst disaster of all. In 2017, something happened on television that nobody expected. Edd China was leaving Wheeler Dealers. After 13 years of transforming cars, Edd was walking away from the show that made him a global icon. And just like that, one of the most beloved partnerships in car television was over. The news left fans shocked. Wheeler Dealers wasn't just popular, it was a ritual for millions of gearheads worldwide. Edd didn't leave quietly. Within days of the announcement, he revealed a video explaining his side of the story. Edd revealed that behind the scenes, the show's format had been brutal and abrupt. The very heart of Wheeler Dealers was being cut down dramatically. For Edd, that was non-negotiable. Fans discovered his real passion for mechanics. Edd had built his reputation on transparency, showing every bolt, every challenge that came with bringing old cars back to life. It was about the love of the craft. But the network kept pushing for more streamlined episodes, faster production, and broader appeal. Edd's detailed repairs were being sidelined. The essence of the show was changing, and so was Edd's patience. But what followed was pure chaos. Many fans forced Mike Brewer to bring Edd back, but the backlash didn't stop at criticism. It got personal. Mike and his family were faced with hate and online threats. What should have been a professional disagreement turned into something even darker. Mike later admitted that period was one of the most painful times of his life, and despite the cameras and the global success, Mike found himself at rock bottom. The show continued. Wheeler Dealers pulled in a new mechanic, Ant Anstead, and carried on with its international fanbase. But the damage from Edd's exit never fully healed. The partnership that defined the show was gone. The chemistry that made Wheeler Dealers a global hit had fractured. Behind closed doors, Mike stayed mostly silent, refusing to fuel the rumors. But while Edd calmly defended his decision, fans demanded more answers. By the end, both Mike and Edd were navigating the fallout of a partnership that had defined their careers. For years after Edd China's sudden departure from Wheeler Dealers, the silence from Mike Brewer only fueled the fire. Fans wanted to know what really happened between Mike and Edd, and why did one of the most successful partnerships in car TV suddenly fall apart. According to Brewer, the betrayal was a slow, complicated buildup of pressure and creative differences. Brewer says the reality of producing Wheeler Dealers had become overwhelming and caused enormous budgets to hang over every decision. Mike claims Edd wanted space to dive deep into the mechanics, but he struggled with the new production. Behind the scenes, conversations turned heated. Mike and Edd debated everything. Their visions for the show were pulling in opposite directions. But in Brewer's eyes, he didn't just dislike him, he wanted him gone, and that wasn't the end of it. Just months after his exit, Edd released his YouTube channel, where he promised fans the one thing they always loved: unfiltered, detailed, and hands-on car content without the limits of network television. His first major project, named Garage Revival, premiered on May 1st, 2018. Edd rolled up his sleeves and got to work, bringing those vehicles and their owners' dreams back to life. On the surface, it looked like quirky inventions and step-by-step mechanical deep dives. For the first time, Edd was building cars entirely on his terms, free from the constraints of TV schedules, tight edits, and sponsor-driven deadlines. But Edd didn't stop with Garage Revival. He pushed with new content, showing off his love for engineering and his offbeat creations. Fans got a closer look at his workshop, his personal projects, and his vision for how car content should be shared. Back then, Mike Brewer hoped to keep the show alive with Ant Anstead, but fans debated who was better, which era of the show was more authentic, and whether Wheeler Dealers would ever feel the same without Edd's towering frame in the workshop. Edd China had built his own corner of the car world, one focused entirely on passion and precision, and that's what saved the show from getting buried. Even after their split, you couldn't mention Wheeler Dealers without sparking a debate about their partnership, especially the tension behind the scenes. But one thing was clear: together, they created something that reshaped automotive TV forever. Meanwhile, Edd continued building his own legacy outside mainstream television. He kept experimenting with new builds, sharing behind-the-scenes knowledge, and staying connected with the gearhead community in a way that felt raw and unfiltered. Brewer has admitted that, despite everything, he still respects Edd's talent and the legacy they built together. He's even dropped hints that a reunion isn't impossible, but he's also realistic. Bringing them back together would take more than fan demand. It would take a shared understanding of how the project should run and how to balance passion with production realities. Edd has been more reserved, focusing on his independent work, but he's never denied the impact Wheeler Dealers had on his career, or the millions of fans who discovered their love for classic cars because of the show. But now the situation has flipped, and the fire was just getting started. The story of Mike Brewer and Edd China is bigger than just cars. It's about passion, pride, and what happens when two people with wildly different visions build something remarkable. Together or apart, their influence can't be denied. They inspired countless people to take on a restoration project or simply fall in love with the beauty of classic cars. For now, both men are walking their own roads, but the legacy they left behind went on to change restoration history forever. Share your thoughts about Edd and Wheeler Dealers in the comments below. And if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for further updates, and click the next video on screen for another interesting story.